Hello everyone, welcome to session 15 of LTEC 676, Social and Ethical Issues in Educational Technology. In this week's video, we're going to talk about three things. First, I want to talk a little bit about housekeeping related to office hours and the upcoming schedule for the next 3 weeks. Then I want to explore a couple of recent articles from the popular press expressing some suspicion about major technology companies. And finally, I want to introduce the concept of digital intelligence and how that might relate to educational technology. So let's get started. As a reminder, office hours are required this week, which is session 15. These office hours will last about 20 minutes. These are informal catch-up sessions. Feel free to bring questions about the course, about its content, or graduate school in general. I'm looking forward to meeting with each of you. Now, I want to begin by talking about the final paper and concept map for the course. Thank you for handing in version 1 of your course concept maps. They're really beautiful, and I'm really impressed with how you approach structuring your concept maps. Now, we did that as a prelude to the final paper. So let me talk a little bit about the final paper. So what you need to do for the final paper is write a paper that synthesizes the main ideas of LTEC 676. Just as a reminder, synthesize means combine a number of things into a coherent whole. As you know, we've covered a lot of different topics this semester from a lot of different perspectives. Your job in this paper is to synthesize those and make it feel like a coherent whole. And that's going to take some thinking and some planning on your part. Now, the purpose of this is to get each and every one of you to analyze and evaluate the themes of the course. Now, here are some important details you need to keep in mind. Number one, the length of the paper should be 5 to 6 double-spaced pages. That excludes references and your concept map. In addition, your final paper should include a revised version of your concept map. This concept map page does not count against your overall page limit, and you should reference your concept map in your paper. So actually refer to it as if it was a diagram that you're talking about in the narrative of your paper. Now, in terms of styling, your writing should be polished and academic, and of course it should follow APA style. And you need to reference the course readings by drawing explicitly on different articles and book chapters that we've read this semester. I wanted to show you a sample outline that you might use when structuring your final paper. So you can see here in this table, I have a page number and then the possible content. If I was to do this assignment, this is how I might structure it, keeping in mind that I need to have 5 or 6 pages of double-spaced narrative that I'm writing. So in page 1, I would focus completely on an introduction. What am I talking about and why am I talking about it? That's one page. Page 2 would focus on what I think is the first big idea of the course. I would explain what that big idea is. I would give some examples of that idea, and I would talk about why that idea is important. Page 3 would be very similar, but I would talk about the second big idea. Again, what is it? What are some examples of it? And why is it important? Page 4 would be the third big idea. What is it? What are some examples? Why is it important? And then I would end with page 5 as a conclusion. I would summarize what I talked about and what I think it all means. What's the big picture? And then, of course, I would add in a page 6, which would include my references, and then a page 7, which includes my revised concept map. So that's a sample outline that you might consider using to structure your final paper. Of course, if you have any questions about this, feel free to bring those questions to this week's upcoming office hours. Okay, I want to transition now to talk a little bit about digital equity and digital citizenship. Now, as you know, the course set out to cover 6 units and themes. And so far, we've been talking about technology and equity in schools, racial and ethnic divides, gender uses in technology, and other related social issues. And I'm sure you've all noticed that this has been pretty heavy content. There's not a whole lot of good news that has come out of our studies of equity, of race, gender, and class issues when it comes to the role of technology in teaching and learning. However, I don't want to end on a negative note. For that reason, what I want to do with the final few weeks of the semester is focus on a model for digital equity and this concept of digital citizenship. And we're going to do that in part by reading a few chapters from Libby Miller's new book called Technology for Transformation. And as you can see in the subtitle of this book, which is Perspectives of Hope in the Digital Age, Miller and her colleagues are trying to think about ways that technology can actually be leveraged to bring about the societal transformation that we're all hoping will happen. And so I wanted to end on this idea of perspectives of hope. And of course, we'll tie that into this idea of digital equity and digital citizenship. Now, I want to bring us back around to this technology pipeline that we explored last week, and this idea of thinking about how do technological artifacts come to be as they are. And as you recall, we talked about upstream analysis where we focus on producers, all the way down to the downstream analysis where we focus on consumers. Now, using this pipeline, I want to focus on a couple of recent articles that have appeared in the popular press. This first article is from Business Insider, and the title of it is called Teachers Love Google's Education Products but Are Suspicious. Why is a mega corporation giving them a perfect tool for free? Interesting headline, interesting question. So let's talk a little bit about this article. Premack, the author of the article, notes that many classrooms in the U.S. are increasingly starting to revolve around Google for Education apps and Google's Chromebook laptops. He also notes that globally, 80 million educators and students are using G Suite for Education, and there are another 30 million Chromebooks in classrooms. In fact, this graphic right here shows you Google's rise in terms of educational technology services. It really began around 2013. They're really pushing out Microsoft and Apple. They have over 50% of the market share as of 2017 when it comes to ed tech services. Premack notes that since the late 2000s, state legislatures have actually been requiring that schools make the move to digital classrooms and textbooks. And Premack argues that Google was aware of this and really took advantage of it. But of course, Google for Education has raised suspicions for edtech analysts and educators. For example, a Gartner research analyst noted that it's pretty clear what motive Google has. This is not a product they're selling. This is not a commercial product. It's getting lots of people very used to working in a Google environment. So what are some of the potential concerns of getting young people, of children, so heavily invested and acclimated to the Google suite of tools? Well, one of it comes down to a power concern. Who gets to choose what software students and teachers use? Does Google get to decide that? Do state legislatures get to decide that? Do school districts get to decide that? Or do individual schools and or teachers get to decide what software students become accustomed to? That's an important power question. Another question is related to fairness and choice. Are students being pigeonholed into the Google ecosystem? And if so, is that fair? Do we have a responsibility as educators to make sure that students know about alternative software? A third concern relates to marketing. As you know, public education has been very committed to not allowing corporations to advertise in public schools. However, many of Google's digital citizenship courses are branded with Google for Education. So the question becomes, is this acceptable for this branding to appear virtually in public school related classwork? This is an interesting question. And I think it relates back to the technology pipeline. Who controls the decisions that happen along that technology pipeline? Now, a similar article that came out right around Thanksgiving in the New York Times, and the title of the article is, Do You Have a Moral Duty to Leave Facebook? And this is written by Dr. Lau, a philosopher at New York University, who has a special interest in ethics. And Dr. Lau argues in this article that Facebook has been used to disrupt elections, disseminate propaganda, and promote hate. And he asks in his article, for those reasons, do we have a duty to leave Facebook given those recent events implicating Facebook in objectionable behavior? And he argues that this objectionable behavior by Facebook or through Facebook concerns everyone. Why does it concern everyone? Well, he argues first, being on Facebook encourages one's friends to stay on Facebook. And some of those friends might engage in these objectionable behaviors. Secondly, he argues that by being on Facebook, one serves as a data point for Facebook's social media experiment. And this data point could be helping Facebook refine its algorithms, which some people might be using for nefarious purposes. And the example he cites is the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The third reason why this objectionable behavior concerns everyone is that using Facebook is not just an individual action, but also a collective one. Choosing to remain on Facebook might not directly undermine democratic values, but such an action could also be wrong because we might be failing to participate in a collective action, that is, leaving Facebook, that would ultimately prevent the deterioration of democracy. So what does Lau conclude? He concludes that we should not place the responsibility to uphold democratic values entirely on Facebook. As moral agents, we should also hold ourselves responsible for our conduct, and we should be reflective about what we say, react to, and share when we are on social media. Of course, this is another great example of looking at technology and social media platforms with an eye of suspicion and really thinking about the social and ethical issues inherent in these massive technological developments. Now I want to move on to something being developed by the Digital Intelligence Institute. Now, the Digital Intelligence Institute is promoting a concept called digital intelligence, which they define as a comprehensive set of technical, cognitive, and socio-emotional competencies that enable individuals to face the challenges of and adapt to the demands of digital life. These competencies or abilities can broadly be broken down into 8 interconnected areas, which are shown here. And they're also represented in the colorful graphic on the right-hand side. And these 8 interconnected areas have to do with digital identity, use, safety, security, emotional intelligence, communication, literacy, and rights. The rationale behind digital intelligence is that in theory, it equips individuals to become wise, competent, and responsible digital citizens who creatively use, control, and create technology to improve individual and societal dignity, prosperity, and well-being. And of course, they have definitions of each of these interconnected areas, such as digital identity, the ability to create and manage one's online identity and reputation. Digital use is the ability to use digital services in media to achieve a healthy balance between life online and offline. Digital safety is the ability to manage risks online as well as problematic content. Digital security is the ability to detect cyber threats, to understand best practices, and to use suitable security tools for data protection. Digital emotional intelligence is the ability to be empathetic and build good relationships with others online. Digital communication is the ability to communicate and collaborate with others using digital technologies and media. Digital literacy is the ability to find, evaluate, utilize, share, and create content, as well as competency in computational thinking. And digital rights is the ability to understand and uphold personal and legal rights, including the rights to privacy, intellectual property, freedom of speech, and protection from hate speech. So I share this digital intelligence movement with you because I think it is an example of a perspective of hope. This idea that there are people thinking about what needs to change in this technology-saturated world. What do young people today, what skills and abilities do they need to have to help us move towards a more fair and just society? Okay, everyone, that's all we have time for today. Have a great week. I'll see you in Canvas.